sorry, I was gonna say.
Go ahead. Yeah, sorry, my bad. No, it's my bad. My bad.
No,
My bad.
you can tell this is a partly British podcast because you
Please.
just apologized a million times. No, sir, after you, please, sir. Hi, everybody. This is Jason,
This is Pete.
and this is the Lost Legions podcast. Take
Ne-
a drink,
nearly-
because you're gonna need it for this one.
Whew, feeling a bit parched. Nearly spat water everywhere.
I thought that was a pint of vodka. And why was that a pint of vodka, you asked? Because what are we talking about this episode, Pete?
Potatoes. No, we are talking about. We are talking about why you should consider going second in your games of heresy.
And why is that, Pete?
Oh, there's a plethora of reasons, Jay. Number one, you get to control the game in terms of objectives. Let me elaborate, perhaps. So by going second, and the way, and this is looking at it within like a what should I say? Like within a box, right? So if you're looking at the core missions, most of them are score at the end of the game. So if you're playing those core missions or any missions that are score at the end of the game, having the last player turn of the game can be such a huge bonus because you can start planning that out in your penultimate turn or the third from last turn, and start playing into that. Okay, I want to set up this scenario where all I've got to do is move here with Unit A, here with Unit B, kill that with Unit C, and I've wrapped up the victory, right? So I think that's a huge thing, which in rose-tinted glasses you can play that way and have that sort of focus going forward if you're going second. What do you think about that?
Okay, so overall, like going second, I'm not as positive about it as Pete is. This is why I think that it is an interesting, very interesting topic. And I think this is part of the reason why we wanted to do this, because we kind of slightly disagree. However, I think we both feel that we both have good points. It's just that like I'm kind of like 60-40 and he's kind of 60-40 the other way. About going second. So I do agree with you. I think you can get, especially in the scoring at the end of the turn missions, that you can control the game a lot more and plan out what you're going to do. And I think that you do have an advantage. And I'm just not sure if it counters the advantage of sort of striking first, setting the tone of the game by going first, and also like controlling where the main thrusts are. Like, because you control sort of like where you're going to strike when you start the game. But there is a big advantage about going second, and you really do control sort of like the scoring part of the game. So you control the direction of the game if you start first, but you control the scoring and the end of the game if you go second, because you basically have the last chance to get the objectives.
Yeah.
And I think that like I think it's a very valuable point.
I think so, but it's not to say that. No, don't be blindsided. Shooting first is good. The other reasons why I've suggested this to you recently, and this is the whole reason, as you sort of highlighted just now, why we wanted to record this, because it was an interesting conversation the two of us were having. The way night fighting now works and the way reactions work lead you more into playing in your opponent's turn. So if you opt for night fighting and choose to go second, your opponent is limited on range unless they've got the tools to deal with that, which I think we've talked about previously. And they're also most likely going to be at -1 ballistic skill, right? Okay, and I've talked to you a bit about this recently, and this is what my Emperor's Children that I'm working on are going to be as well, is if you're with night fighting, obviously a -1 leadership across the board, so you've got to be careful of your pinning checks, but I'm planning to run a lot of my stuff in strong, tough vehicles, and perhaps a couple dreadnoughts, which, are essentially immune to the effects of pinning, right? Does that make sense? So building the list in a way to maximize going second, I think that's an important part of for me to say what I'm planning to do as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, and at first, like when we had this discussion, I disagreed with you, and then like the more we kind of talked about it, I kind of got talked around to Pete's points, and I think that like it is a really interesting choice, especially if you have the tools to kind of weather the turn one shooting, especially because of Night Fight. I mean, not a lot of legions have a way to see through Night Fight, um, except with augury scanners. They still have the -1, like you said. And return fire is such a huge mechanic of the game now that I think that like when we had this discussion, I realized because when when we first talked about this, my first reaction to Pete was, "No, you're wrong," in a polite way.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
might have actually said it more rude right there on camera, but it was like I summed it up. Like I was like, "Nah, go first. It's a lot better because you get the first shot." And then Pete kind of came up with these points about reactions. He came up with them about Night Fight, and I thought it was a much more 2.0 nuanced sort of view of the game. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought you had really, really, really good points, right? Like, especially about the reactions, especially if you build your force to weather turn one, which I could see anecdotally from my side because I had accidentally done that at an event because I
Yeah.
just took 2 Spartans filled with Terminators because I didn't want to carry too much.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. Um, and I weathered turn one a few times when I didn't get it. And I was like, you know what? I did that. I just sat there and I returned fire. Not always with the mechanic, but like I
Yeah.
just sat there and shot back. Um, and I did pretty good in some of those games against some pretty harsh lists. And I think that overall, I think you. Well, okay. So let's
So
talk
some
about
of
the
the other,
two.
yeah.
Sorry, I was gonna say.
Go ahead. Yeah.
You're,
Sorry, my bad. No, it's my bad. My bad.
no,
My
you
bad.
for this. You can tell this is a partly British podcast because you
Please.
just apologized a million times. No, sir, after you, please, sir. Um, so for reactions, let's talk about reactions first. I think that like the one of the biggest benefits of returning to go second is you can, like you said, build up to return fire. So you could take a heavy support squad with an augury scanner with the thoughts that they're going to return back, or vehicles like a Sakaran Punisher that can actually return fire. Um, things that are like built to return fire.
So just to jump in, because it's quite relevant, I think. Then, so this Emperor's Children list that I'm working on for the upcoming attrition event in February
Yeah.
is a Pride of Legion list. I'm using as the minimum amount of models as I can because I want to get it painted up quickly. And the Terminators are running in Spartans. So
Yep.
turn one, my opponent will have an AV 15 flare shield wall and a couple gunboat dreadnoughts and a leviathan. So it's 3 dreadnoughts in total, 1 a leviathan, 2 contemptors, right? All with guns, no claws on them at all. It's 3,250 odd points, just to give you a bit of an overview. And the whole point behind this that I'm thinking is, if I'm opting to go second, the opponent has a choice of shooting at the dreadnoughts, which can return fire and are super tough to take out,
Yep.
or try
And
and
he's a
glance
minus one
out.
to them.
Yeah, exactly. Or try and glance out the flare shielded Spartans.
Yeah.
Right? Don't get me wrong, I'm not countering here for fast moving stuff that's going to come into melter range, and of course you have to adapt to each opponent on that, right? Like that the way they're going to be playing and that sort of stuff. And I will get caught out with it, obviously, but that's kind of the way I'm thinking about it, right?
Right, but the majority of lists that you're going to run up against are going to have a hard time penetrating those 2 AV-15, basically
Yeah,
Spartans, and then the return fire on the dreadnoughts is going to be able to do a lot. Like you have a heavy bolter dreadnought, I think, right? So you're kind of like,
yeah,
okay, fire your heavy support squad at him, and he's going to shoot back like a bajillion shots and hit, and you're going to have a lot of wounds you're going to have to soak.
yeah,
So
exactly, right.
yeah,
And a 1 wound dreadnought is efficient as a 6 wound dreadnought, right? In terms of its output, it doesn't never snap shoots, it never runs, it never breaks, so they can just soak up wounds. So with the little detour there talking about a list, I think that the reason why I wanted to mention that is because I'm building this to go second. And the whole reason why I wanted to start going second is my first 5 or 6 games, my 5 or 6 games out of 8 games at the beginning of 2.0, I was seized on. And this is the other big thing, right? If you choose to go second, you're not going to get seized on because you have already planned.
I feel that some of this is a reaction to the fact that seizing somehow puts you on
100%.
tilt.
I hate
I
it.
don't give a fuck.
I
I actually
hate
love
it.
it. But like,
And
hey Pete, in your last event you ran, how many people seized the initiative?
none, because it was removed from the rules. Everyone kept coming up going, when do I do, there's seize initiative, right? No.
Show
No,
me
it's
on
not
the
in the
doll
rules.
where the bad man seized
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, literally. Yeah. No, I hate it. But yeah, but you know, going to the point, if you go in second, you get to counter deploy. You know that your plan is going to go the way you're intending it, rather than, you know, getting grabbed by the nuts and twisted around a bit. So
I think another thing to kind
yeah,
of bring up is that like this whole conversation is good also just in general, because even if you don't plan on going second, if you if you put a lot more thought into going second, right? Like
yeah,
sometimes it might be of your benefit in an objective game, depending on who you're playing, depending on where the objectives are, depending on what they have. Like they might not have a lot of heavy weapons. Maybe you're fighting all world eaters and they have a grand total of nothing that's not a chain axe, which has happened to me before. And maybe going second's better at that point. You could control the pace of the game. You can, I mean, by backing up, right? Because
yeah.
they're reacting to you. Um, you know, in that case, like I've done that actually with my Space Wolves. It's just backed up, and backed up after a World Eater player is charging across the board. Um, so like, yeah, I think that sometimes going second definitely can be to an advantage. And I think that like you should get out of the mindset of always going first. However, I do think that going first is stronger a lot of the time.
Yeah, and
But I
that
think that your points about building for it, thinking about it, and looking at the advantages that you could get from going second are super strong, and everybody should take that on board.
yeah. Now let's look at like some brief, quick positives of going first, like that we might be overlooking, or that I'm overlooking. You know, with going second, I think the biggest one is being able to pinning now is so
Yeah,
much better, right? So this
yeah,
is again
yeah.
why I'm putting everything in an AV-15 shelter box because you're gonna limit the chance of that happening.
Well,
If you build a list like your Night Lords, you know, if you build a lot of pinning into your list with night fighting and you go first, you are any infantry squad in the open that you would like to have pinning checks on. It's gonna happen, isn't it? And I'm sure it
well,
has
this
happened.
is. I was talking to a Raven Guard player at your event, and like he was like, "Raven Guard are massive. They're so good. They're amazing." And I agree with them. They're
Yeah.
better than I thought. But I was kind of like, "What if you're fighting a tank list?" Because he had all infantry. I'm like,
Was
"What if
this
you're fighting?"
Mark?
I think so.
So he
I was
can't
like,
believe we put them in C tier. Was it C
yes, it
tier?
was.
He's
It was.
furious we put them in
I,
C tier on the
I was
Ranking
like, what if
Legions
you're fighting a
video.
tank list? What if you're fighting a whole bunch of pitting units? What if
Yeah.
you're fighting like, well, there's a lot of things that I think that, what if you go second because you get seized on, like, and then you get pinned, just like you're kind of saying. Like, I think there's a lot of weaknesses to an all infantry list, and I think that like that is an all infantry list ends up being very aggressive. You're going to want to go first. You're going to try to shoot as many people as possible. You're going to try to get as far up the board as you can.
Yeah.
And, but I think that like your point is that you're building an assault list to go second. And like I said, I accidentally did that before. Um,
Yeah.
so I kind of see like what your point is. And I think there's some really valid points to take from it. And I think there's some really interesting list building points to take from it. And I think because of return fire, and you pointed this out to me, that it's a far stronger option to go second now, because you're not necessarily just pinned and you're not just necessarily screwed. Right?
Yeah, just
Like,
not having
but yeah,
hammered for an entire half an hour or something. Yeah, exactly.
yeah. But there are dangers, like you said, like the pinning. I think the pinning's a really, really, really good point. So like if you're all infantry, I guess like Mark's list, right? Mark's not going to go second because he's going to get pinned.
Yeah.
But like your list, because you have the armored boxes to like protect you from being pinned, it's not as big of a deal to go second, especially because you can weather it. So I guess again, like kind of it's coming down to a theme with us. It depends on your list and what you want to do with it.
Yeah, completely. I think Yeah, it's just you can bank on going second. You can't bank on going first, unless your opponent also wants to go second and they win the roll off.
You
And
really like sureties, like death, taxes, and going second.
yeah, maybe that should be the name of the episode.
Death, taxes, and going second. Yeah, well, those are yes. There you go.
And I want to say, like, it was the only reason why I thought about going second is because Will Henry, as some of you may know him as, said this to me within the first month of 2.0. He's like, I think going second's stronger. But he didn't elaborate. He never expressed why. And I've been, like, racking my brain, like, oh, all these mechanics come together and they could possibly be a thing. But anyway, I guess it'd be cool to see how this goes at the event and perhaps get a little bit of feedback on it.
I'm curious on how it goes for you. I think you should come back and let us know. I think if anyone has any opinions on it, let us know in the comments what you think about purposely going second and how you feel about it. I think it'd be interesting, and I think hopefully we can have an interesting discussion in this, like especially in the comments, because I would love to see how people feel. Because again, like Pete talked me around, and I think my opinion became a lot more fluid on this, right? Like at first I was like, nope, and then now I'm like, well, actually, I think there's some really good points. Yeah.
And I'm having a revelation here, like seconds. Wow, this could work. There might be some of you listening that go to second all the time, right? So yeah, let us know your experiences of it as well, right? If you do it, tell us how you feel. Cool, man. You got anything else you want to add?
What?
Have you got anything else you would like to add?
I thought that's what you said. We'll edit that out.
For the record, Jason has nothing else to add. Yeah.
Pete just read my mind. What was that? Yeah. I just felt like something lifted from my mind.
Right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for watching, guys. Give it a like, give it a subscribe. You know the drill. Check out our Patreon. Catch you later.